So our next guests for the steering committee are Nicole Hill and Christian Stumpf, and I hope I said that correctly, Christian, with the Nature Conservancy. And as many of you know, as communities, there has been this growing initiative called Arizona Thrives. And some of you have possibly been in touch with the Nature Conservancy on this already, others maybe not. But we thought it would be a really helpful opportunity to be able to have kind of hear the overall message about what the priorities are for that particular statewide initiative and how cities can get involved with it. A bit of information about Nicole and Christian. So Nicole is the Arizona Thrives program lead. So very excited that she's able to join us. And Christian is the director of external affairs. And from what I understand, he spends a little bit of time up at the legislature and different places talking all things environmental, I'm sure. Nicole has been with the TNC since 2018 and serves obviously as the lead. She's a graduate of Ball State University and has a degree in natural resources management, and also her graduate work was at Clemson University in city and regional planning. So she has over 20 years of experience in the nonprofit conservation program management area. And a wealth of experience, it looks like. And one unique thing she included in her bio was that she served 6 years as an elected city council member in Tumwater, Washington. So that, I'm sure, has been very helpful experience for her navigating this process. And with Christian, he's been with TNC since 2015. He manages relationships with local, state, and federal elected officials, as well as partner organizations and state agencies. I do believe he is an ASU graduate. Political science. So go Devils, that's good to hear. And his passion for politics was solidified when he interned for a US Senator in his final 2 years of college. So that, I think, thrust him into the political arena, and he has a long list of experience in advocating and working with different organizations, everything from the American Lung Association to various other organizations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them. Welcome, Nicole. Welcome, Christian. I'm not sure who's driving the PowerPoint presentation, but you both are co-hosts, so feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Anne. So I'm going to drive the PowerPoint presentation, but Christian's actually going to lead us off and give a little context around how Nature Conservancy got to this Arizona Thrives concept. So
thank you.
Yeah.
And it's great to see some familiar faces, and I know that actually we have some cities here that are already signed on to the initiative and the alliance with Phoenix and Tucson. And Phil, it's great to see you. It's been a while. So what a fun group. So yeah,
Anne,
just a little.
Hold on just a second.
Okay.
I can't start the PowerPoint. It says host has disabled screen sharing. And you have it, so if you want to run it too, that's okay too. Oh, nope, I can do it now.
Yes, try it again. For some reason, it may have popped off. So.
All right, here we go. Okay, Christian, take it away.
All right, so good. So yeah, the Arizona Thrives initiative is an initiative we're really hoping can help Arizona achieve clean air, healthy communities, and a strong economy. Before the pandemic, Arizona was really on the rise, one of the fastest growing states. You know, we still are. And we've got a really increasingly diverse and dynamic economy. However, even then, not all Arizona was benefiting. And there were changes occurring, you know, that threatened that prosperity. The pandemic really illustrated vulnerabilities within our economy and our communities. And so to create the Arizona, you know, we all envision, we need to work together in ways that position Arizona for changes that are already beginning to transform the economy and the environment around the US and the world. So next slide. So Arizona Thrives really arose out of the very costly Prop 127 in 2018. It was one of the most expensive initiatives ever in Arizona. I think it was probably around $50 or $60 million spent between the opposition side and the support side. So we really thought there has to be a better way to go about this. So after its defeat, TNC began conversations with diverse groups about creating a forum, in which we could change conversations from one of conflict to one of that was more collaborative. Discussions like this needed to occur in order for Arizona to develop its own path forward. There are many things that need to be taken into account when considering this path, including making sure the solutions are equitable and also allow for our economy and communities to grow. Additional challenges also are, we're experiencing a 20-year drought, and also our forests in northern Arizona are completely overgrown, and they're at risk of, catastrophic wildfire pretty much every time the fire season comes around. So lots of things to consider. Next slide. And then as you know, and especially after, getting through this past summer, a lot of our challenges have to do with air quality and heat. Phoenix ranks 7th worst for ozone pollution, and Phoenix and Tucson metro areas rank in the top 3 for hottest cities in the US. Next slide. And then I'm sure you're familiar with this as well. A study was done in Phoenix that measured temperatures in 2 neighborhoods that were only 2 miles apart. And what was shown was a 13-degree difference in temperature. And then these photos, I'm sure you've seen too. These really explain what's going on out there with urban heat. This first slide shows the dark red, where heat is the worst in the metro area. And then as you move and overlay the second slide, that shows you where the most vegetation occurs. And you can see the direct correlation between heat and vegetation. And then if you take it another step to include child poverty, you can see that there's a correlation between all of these. And I think if you take an air quality slide, take it one step further, that it would show there's similar communities that are impacted adversely more than others. So so this really emphasizes that while there are overall challenges we face, that many of them are most dramatically felt by people who have less resources to adapt. And then next slide. And then this is, thank you, Fatima, for providing this slide. This shows that the same thing is occurring in Tucson as well. And so as we started talking about this and we dug a little deeper, we really thought, this started out as clean air and high wage, good paying jobs in a healthy environment. But we really saw that there was a direct link between clean energy and clean air, as the biggest source of pollution can be attributed to transportation. Our challenges with our ozone designation in Phoenix, really could have direct impacts on how our economy grows and the jobs that we're able to create. So this framework for action was developed out of the phase 1 portion of Arizona Thrives, which brought together over 70 groups that included businesses, local and state governments, various NGOs, that came together to look at, where are the areas that we can possibly have the most impact. Many of these probably look familiar. Our hope is that Arizona Thrives can be a forum where these issues are, you know, prioritized, and then action steps can be developed, you know, to see them through. So by having a diverse group that's talking to each other instead of really doing what we've done in the past, which is issue-based advocacy, if we can have everyone set their priorities aside for a minute and come together to maybe pick 3, 4, 5, 6 things that we can all work on together that are big, that could make an impact, you know, we think that's sets Arizona on a much better path than we're currently on. So with that, I can take some questions, or we can wait till the end, but Nicole is going to talk a little bit more about the development of the Alliance.
So I'll jump in and just mention that, you know, the framework was put together in 2019 during our phase 1 session. And the feedback that we got on that process was largely that it was really nice to have some of these conversations in a lower stake arena where everyone was really allowed to kind of explore ideas, test concepts, throw some things on the table, and see how utilities and business and advocates all responded to things. And so at the time, I think a lot of things were going on at the ACC, and so it was a place to have the broader economy-wide conversation. You know, we tend to stay on single issues, but to think about this in an economy-wide way and how it could play out, you know, folks were pretty grateful for that conversation and encouraged us to kind of continue to build off of that. So last year, we started the development of the Arizona Thrives Alliance. And in order to do that, we put together a pretty diverse task force of folks working in different places in the economy that had clean air and clean energy nexus. So we had a couple of folks from cities and a couple of folks from industry, some advocates, some technical people. So we had a really good group, and we tasked them with putting together the Arizona Thrives Alliance. What does it look like? You know, how do we build this out and create the leadership that's economy-wide around this issue? You know, we have a lot of local leadership at the local government. We have a lot of corporate leadership. And how do we kind of blend this together and leverage everyone's talents? So the task force developed a set of goals and principles. The goals are pretty simple. It's to meet or outperform the air quality standards of the Clean Air Act. We have this challenge in Maricopa County, but several counties in Arizona are actually on the cusp of coming out of compliance with the Clean Air Act. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to those folks and supporting them with tools. And then the second goal was to put Arizona on an economy-wide path to net zero carbon neutrality by 2050. So, you know, this was well before the ACA was setting, the Arizona Corporation Commission was setting goals, but it was after Prop 127 where, you know, everyone was kind of scared off by that 2050 concept until we really started to look at it and to see the pathways to that goal. And then there were a couple of guiding principles that we really wanted to emphasize. And some of them are obvious, the clean air and clean energy part, but the other ones were things that we, you know, wherever we go with this alliance, we want to make sure that it's durable and credible, that we're using data, that we're putting forth solutions that are, you know, are long lasting and commitments that folks are really ready to make. We emphasize the economy-wide piece because, you know, unlike a lot of other states are really focusing on, you know, do the utilities, you know, tell the utilities what we need to do. But we all, even individuals, have personal choices that we need to make to move us on this pathway. So looking at this economy-wide has been important since the beginning. And the equity issue, perhaps amplified by the fact that we've been in a pandemic for most of the period that this task force was meeting. And even some people had a challenge even to have the technology and capability to participate in some of these conversations, has really been underscored as part of Arizona Thrive's work we've always thought about equity in terms of utility rates, but when we think about economy-wide, when we think about transportation and built environment, there are a lot of equity issues that we need to address in that process as we transition to the new economy, and it's happening right now. So we need to continue to put those things front and center. Along with goals and guiding principles, the task force identified a couple of areas that they thought Arizona Thrives could really play a role. And so that first one is supporting development of priority pathways in those different pieces of the economy. Encourage alignment around policies and practices. We consciously made the choice to not be a lobbying entity, but a place to have those conversations where members could actually go out and advocate on their own if it's in alignment with Arizona Thrives. We talked about the need for education around the Alliance goals. I think with Prop 127, it was, I think folks know that not all of the messaging around that was completely accurate, but there just wasn't a lot of time to explore those things in depth. And so as we move forward with messaging and education around the Alliance goals, we have an opportunity to create a depth in our communities around understanding these issues better. With the economic development community, the Tech Council, and others, we've talked about the need to identify technology and products for innovation that can help Arizona in particularly move faster along those pathways. And then the other real gap that was noticed is that we don't actually have a whole lot of dashboard and progress indicators around carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. And one reason for that is the states actually prohibited state agencies from managing these kinds of data sets and reporting out on greenhouse gas emissions. So we need a credible, durable group of people to do that. And so U of A actually offered to do that for us, to work on that dashboard piece. So those are we don't have all of the resources to do this. We know that we might be best served supporting other folks doing some of these things, but these were things that were identified as possible roles for Arizona Thrives. Those pathways that I talked about, those priority pathways, we couch our work in three different major buckets. One is how we power our economy, which is largely around the utilities. The second one is how we move, which is around transportation. And the third one is where we live and work, which is really the built environment and the places that we work. So we organize our work around these three major themes. We have work groups that are working on these different pieces. So I welcome participation from members and others who can add value to these conversations. As we develop these pathways, we might have multiple options along our pathways to decarbonize these sectors of the economy. So the more expertise and talent that we have in these conversations, that's really valuable. Currently, we have some strategic priorities that have come out of those conversations. In the How We Power group, we talk a lot about energy efficiency, and energy efficiency is usually evaluated based on how much energy it reduces and how it affects rates. But what if we looked at that through energy efficiency mechanisms that reduced the most carbon? So we've introduced this concept of thinking about energy efficiency in in an additional way. And then, we talk with the utilities quite a bit about deploying renewable energy, but doing that responsibly and really thinking about where we put that and the impacts that it has on the environment. In the Where We Live and Work group, we've talked about energy efficiency and high electrification of buildings as being a strategy to pursue, and investing in natural solutions that support rural and urban communities. We know that natural solutions often provide inexpensive ways of addressing some of our greenhouse gas emissions and our heat problems. In the How We Move section, we've talked about the acceleration of adoption of carbon-free vehicles, particularly at the state and municipal and business fleet level, promoting programs that reduce vehicle miles traveled, and investing in infrastructure that supports the goals of Arizona Thrives. None of these in themselves are completely earth-shattering. You know, there's not anything here that in particular our local units of government aren't already thinking about. But these are things that are different for businesses to think about engaging in. These are things that are a little bit different for home builders and others to start figuring out how this might apply to them. So for, I think, our local government leaders, not earth-shattering. I think for lots of other members of the Alliance, even having conversations about these kinds of things is starting to move them on a path, and they're weighing how far they're ready to go with some of these things. So all good conversations. The other piece that the task force really identified as a gap is a broader economic impact assessment of some of these things. So we're working with Bain and Company to do that overall economic impact. And so they've offered to work with us around those three buckets: energy, transportation, and the built environment, and to build some scenarios out about different options that we might have to pursue in terms of programs or policies or standards or goals, and identify you know, the public health benefits and the indirect economic impact and the direct economic impact. So we're working with them to develop this product. I think we'll probably have it out in mid to late March. But this is an opportunity for kind of decision makers and policy makers to look at some of these options and evaluate how that might best apply to them and whether or not it's a worthwhile pursuit. And then as for folks who have signed on to the Alliance, and we are taking, we are working with several folks, communities on this call to shore up this partnership and this alliance. Folks, you know, always ask, you know, what is the involvement necessary to participate in this? And for some folks, it's just voluntarily aligning your plans and strategies around the Alliance goals and guiding principles. For some folks, they really do want to be more collaborative and participate in those work groups and have, you know, access to their colleagues and have discussions around these key issues that they're dealing with. And some folks have said, you know, I know Arizona Thrives isn't going to lobby, but we're lobbying. We plan on taking action on some of the things that that are coming out of Arizona Thrives. So we're meeting people where they're at and the level of comfort that they're interested in participating in Arizona Thrives. Christian and I were kind of talking about, you know, for local units of government, kind of what are the benefits of joining. You know, we're not an entity that has dues or anything like that, but you know, I think we've seen more recently that you know, having these commitments to decarbonizing our economy really is driving sustainable economic growth. You know, companies care about where they're relocating, and they are looking for these kinds of goals in communities. It may, you know, some cities are making these commitments, sometimes the state is making these commitments, but these are important goals that a lot of major companies and potential employers are considering when they relocate. I think there's an opportunity as some of the Bain studies come out and some other economic studies that we've been asked to consider. There's an opportunity to really look at cost benefit of actions that any community could take. We're working, you know, and have, you know, hired a consulting firm to help us with communications. So your input and participation in Arizona Thrives on citizen awareness around some of these issues will be really valuable as we work to tell these stories and do an education campaign. And then I think, you know, as some cities look at community resiliency and think about how they're planning, I'm a planner by training, so I'm always going to advocate for great planning. But like learning from one another on that planning level could also be a space that Arizona Thrives could support specific to Arizona. And then, you know, we have a lot of different interests at the table who are right now currently very interested in state and federal programs and policies around some of the goals that we share. So that's kind of the list that we thought about for the cities. And then I'll just conclude with like the current list of early signers and just share a little bit about our launch. We plan to publicly launch Arizona Thrives in mid-March. We're going to do a softer launch with the 120 people that have participated in our discussions so far at the end of the month, so that they're really more knowledgeable, but the public launch will be mid-March. And we're inviting communities to participate and join us. We've got Flagstaff, Phoenix, and Tucson on board, and 4 or 5 other cities in different phases of interest in joining Arizona Thrives. And so this is kind of our community list and companies, and I think we'll just continue to build this out and add more voices to the conversation.